All right. Hey, everyone. This is the programming group classes lecture. Just one thing to note, you can adjust the speed at which I'm talking on the little bar down at the bottom. You can go to like 1.2 if you want me to talk a little bit faster, or you can go to zero point 0.8 if I'm rambling too quickly. So first, going over the key takeaways, it's going to be how I program for the general class, who I program for, so that specific avatar that I think of when I write these workouts, why you see certain modalities and how I use them, my selected bias on what I like to program, why I like to do that, and how that all comes together, and then some biases that you may have or that you're selecting, how to scale up and make classes better, giving feedback and kind of how it can be better for everyone if you give feedback in certain ways, and then understanding the whole puzzle of kind of all the time frames and everything that we're playing with that all mash together. So, number one, the whole point of working out is to provide a stimulus that elicits an adaptation response. So, doing something to your body that causes it to want to make sure that that doesn't happen again, and then it recovers. So, you damage your muscles just slightly, it tries to rebuild those muscles even stronger. So, that same exact thing, if you were to do it again, wouldn't cause that same amount of damage. And that's why we have these two terms at the bottom, the minimum effective dose and the maximum recoverable volume. The minimum effective dose is something that we can do, the least amount that we can do, but still get that response. The fitter you get, the higher that minimum effective dose has to be. So think of it as the better squatter you are, the heavier the bar has to be in order to actually give you some soreness or that adaptation response. And then the maximum recoverable volume, which again can increase with fitness, is how much can you do every day or every week or every cycle that still allows you to recover in a healthy way and you don't start declining in your strength or your speed and things like that. So now we're getting into who I program for. So this is just kind of the average of everybody that goes to the gym. They are between 30 and 55 years old. They can deadlift their body weight fairly well. They run a 10-minute mile and they could do about 3 pull-ups. Their responsibilities, they have 1 to 2 kids. They work at least part-time and they have additional hobbies on the weekends. So like golf, mountain biking, tennis, things like that. And then habits. They typically sleep 7 hours, eat a balanced diet of protein, fat, and carbohydrates. They have 1 to 3 alcoholic drinks per week, and they average about 4 classes per week, 4 CrossFit classes or 3 classes in like a barbell club or something like that. Now, when I program, I don't specifically put workouts for this person, but I know if this is the average, I can make some of my workouts a little bit too hard for this person, and then maybe some a little bit easier or right in this realm. And then day to day, the coaches will adjust that to make sure that the workout is appropriate. Then for modalities, here are all the ones that we're going to go over pretty quickly. Number 1, strength. We do percentage-based strength overload and then RPE-based progressive overload, meaning when we're doing a specific strength, it's typically building on itself week over week during the cycle or the focus, and then a new focus, we kind of have to bring it back down, use the new percentages, and build back up. The RPE-based is based off of how you feel that day or that week, so that can adjust. This is great for people that have busy, inconsistent lives that don't have a lot of control over the other external factors or aren't controlling the other external factors. And percentage-based is way better for people that are super consistent and have the ability to have everything else under control. And then the other strength is gymnastics, position, and skill development. So that's anywhere from like 15 to 22 minutes that we work on that. The AMRAP, that is a self-adjusting intensity. So as you know, we do a specific amount of time, and then it allows you to just do as many rounds as you can within your full capacity. And then we have EMOMs, or pretty much any type of intervals. This is great for technique development. I'm giving you that forced rest to make sure that everything is nice and crisp. We have the skill under duress. So that is, I have you do something that's challenging you at a high level for skill, but maybe not enough reps and enough rest that you can still do the movement correctly. But now we're just adding a little bit more flame to the fire. Then we have strength with a fixed recovery. This would be slightly longer intervals, so maybe a squat session every 2 minutes or every 2.5 minutes, you do a set of squats. We don't do that too often because I like to let people kind of control their own rest, but that is one way that we could do that. And then volume accumulation. You'll see this during the open where we start to have these EMOMs building on themselves week over week, where maybe you start with 5 for 10 minutes and then 6 toes to bar for 10 minutes, and each week you slowly bump it up. And then the 4 time is controls workout volume or work volume. So this will allow me to, in the middle of the week or even in the beginning, I obviously know what's going next. So when I put a 4 time in there where it's only 3 rounds or only 4 rounds, I want to make sure that you're only running that distance or only doing that amount of pull-ups, because something else later in the week may also include that. And I don't want to always program AMRAPs. And then if you go really hard on Monday on pull-ups, and then I have more pull-ups later on Wednesday, you're like, well, I used all my pull-up capacity. So that's another great way to use 4 time or rounds 4 time. Then the kind of shorter modalities that we work with, we have the rounds for quality. That is lower intensity to focus on mechanics and consistency. So things like posture work or like assistance exercises, that's great for rounds for quality. And then skill development under very low stress. So if you're trying to learn a newer skill or a skill that is very challenging or very technical, usually rounds for quality is much better because your timing and the intensity is way down. Then we have cool down. This reduces the session cost. So it allows you to have increased recovery or speeds up that recovery. Instead of doing a really hot 5-minute workout and then just leaving and going right into your car and sitting down at a desk, if you do some slower movements, some fold and reach, kind of biking nice and slow, can get you back to homeostasis a little bit faster, and maybe while still maintaining some good blood flow in the muscles and in the joints that you were just using. Then we have tracks, everybody's favorite. We an additional volume under specific movements or muscles. So this is, again, something that we need to keep in mind, the maximum recoverable volume. So when we're working with tracks, it's usually 5 to 7 minutes long, just something that we, maybe movements that we underutilize in class. So we're typically not doing like external rotations or bicep curls or like calf raises. But if you have a deficiency in those things, the only way that they'll get better is if you pay a little bit more attention to those and hit them a little more often. Then we're sure, and then we'll get smaller and smaller. So the macro cycle, or what I call a focus block, is anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks. So sometimes we'll have a focus that's 6 weeks, sometimes it's 12. It depends on what we're trying to accomplish. Within those focuses, I try to pick 2 to 3 main priority items and progressively overload those. So sometimes you'll see squat cycles. Right now we're in a single leg cycle where the single leg is getting heavier, or there's more reps, or both. And then within that cycle of however many weeks, it's usually a 2, 3, or 4 week like micro cycle copied over 2 or 3 times, where it's again progressively overloaded. It gets a little bit harder, or the reps change just slightly. Then going down into a little bit closer, we have the week cycle. So that's Monday through Saturday. I'm always assuming Sunday is a rest day or an activity day. But generally, again, most people are hitting 4 workouts a week. And I first prioritize the focus movements within that week. So depending on what we're doing, I place those in the days, making sure that they're not the same day that they were last week. So we're not, again, always squatting on Monday or always doing pull-ups on Wednesday. It can move around for people with different schedules. And then from there, I fill in all the other movements that we still need to hit, that include squatting, pressing, pulling, maybe bounding like box jumps or double unders. And then even further broken down into that of what I'm considering is like upper body pulling, upper body pressing, lower body pressing, lower body pulling, single leg, different types of bounding. And then on top of all of that, we also have to consider the energy systems that we're using, whether it's we're doing a lot of very short bursty work like under 5 seconds, think like back squatting, or that middle distance stuff like 400, 800 meter runs, or the longer like 30-minute EMOMs or 24-minute EMOMs, things like that, where it's a much longer duration. We have to also consider that we're varying up what energy systems we're using, not only each day, but throughout the whole week. Then we have the smallest bit here is the class cycle. So I only have 60 minutes to program this, and typically each coach is getting their own picture of what they want their class to run, but generally it almost always looks like this. We have a start, brief, warm-up. That usually is 8 minutes. So like 2 minutes for, hey, welcome to class, this is what we're doing. Think about this in the warm-up. Here are the warm-up moves. Okay, go. And then 6 minutes. Then we have 7 minutes of mobility. That's usually like, 30 to 40 seconds on each side of 3 to 4 different movements. That gets us to the 15-minute mark. Then we brief the strength, or whatever that section is, all the way to the end of the strength. That's about 22 minutes with setting everything up and breaking everything down. So we're at the 37-minute mark. Then we have to brief, bathroom, and buffoonery. That's like, the random stories that we're talking about, the brief of what's going to happen with the Metcon, the extra equipment that may need to be changed around, and then the last-minute bathroom breaks. That takes about 3 minutes of kind of question and answer stuff. Then we have a Metcon, generally around 15 minutes, sometimes 10, sometimes 20. That leaves us at the 55-minute mark, and then we have 5 minutes to either do a cool down, or if the strength ran a little bit long, or the Metcon, or we had more questions to answer, we butt right up against that 60, sometimes 65-minute mark. So as you can see here, there's not a ton of movement. The main movement that we could play around with is how long the strength is and how long the Metcon is. And it's not like I can just take 10 minutes away from the strength while still maintaining the integrity of the strength and tack it on to this. Because oftentimes 10 minutes or 5 minutes of a deadlift, there's just not enough time to get to a serious amount of weight. So you do not get the minimum effective dose. So you actually kind of wasted your time if you're not spending enough time on the strength. And then on top of that, adding 2-4 minutes of an already slightly longer Metcon, maybe like a 15 going to an 18-minute Metcon, you're still technically working in the same like energy system. So as long as you're going really hard in that 15 minutes, going a little bit slower but going for 18 minutes isn't actually paying that much more than you would think, generally speaking, in a class context. So just some things to think about there. Obviously, some things you've seen where a whole class is just a whole Metcon. Sometimes it's double strength and stuff like that, but you need to respect how much time it takes to actually get a good effective dose of strength or a Metcon. Now we're going into my known and intended biases. These are biases that I've talked to the other coaches about and that I know that I program for myself with my reasons. I'm not saying that I'm right. I'm just saying these are my biases. So knowing that I only have 12 18-minute blocks per week, meaning I have like 6 days times the 2 blocks per day. I can combine those blocks. I can bend them around a little bit. But I typically like to bias it towards metabolic conditioning, meaning that almost every day that you come to the gym, more days than not, there's going to be a Metcon piece. And then after that, there's going to be a strength piece. Then there will be more likely a really long Metcon. And then rarely will we have a double strength or something where we're not really getting our heart rate up. And I think that it's just more important for general fitness and what most of the people are trying to do, like that avatar in life. The metabolic conditioning that we do is going to give them way more benefit than just getting a little bit stronger in a strength movement once they have the necessary strength. So now we have also biased towards slightly less varied. So I would rather have people pretty proficient at 30 moves than to always just be adding on new things. And I mitigate that by doing the focuses. If you're here for a whole year, you will hit a lot of different moves, but week over week, I try to keep everything fairly familiar with some fun stuff that feels new without just constantly being like, I don't know, we haven't done this in forever. We almost never do this. And the next time I missed that day, so it may never happen again, or I might not see it for another month or two. It's harder to get good at stuff that way. Overhead squats, a lot of these have a common theme, so I'm going to run through these pretty quick. Overhead squats typically limits intensity so much that it's kind of a waste of a block of time for some people. When you see workouts with overhead squats. Some people that can already do them, they get a great workout and it's worth getting good at overhead squats. But the other people that are new to it, they're using a PVC pipe or it just hurts their shoulders to even have the trainer bar overhead. So they have to go so light and then they try to push on the other movements. And it's just a incomplete workout where they feel like, I wish I would have just done power cleans or something like that. Then we have the thruster. The reason I don't program the thruster very often is because I like to break it up into its parts. So I'd rather have like a front squat day and a push press day rather than doing a thruster day. And then my hand is kind of forced into like a cardio day after that because we worked so much of the body just on the thruster. The thruster is a great movement. You'll see it when the open gets close. Ring work, similar to overhead squats. Typically, most people don't have the stability to build in the ring. So we'll dabble in ring work, but most of the time we just need to work on general pressing and stability with a nice standard barbell or dumbbells. I go a little bit more towards lower running volume. One, running is hard to coach because you're literally running away from us, and it can be done on its own. It's kind of one of those exercises where if you are a runner and you really like running workouts or you like to run, you should do that on your own time, and then we will have more running, especially since we have this big long winter. In the summer, I try to get out, but it's raining, the weather's different, all that stuff. So one thing that I'm going to do to help change this is that instead of just saying erg, I can also have erg or running. So if you don't want to be on the erg again, there will be a running distance. That's one change that I'll make. Same thing, rope climbs, space and equipment. We don't really have high ceilings and attachment points. Kettlebells, this is me kind of just being a baby, but they break the floor because people drop them from overhead. Even though we say, hey, please don't drop the dumbbells, they end up people getting tired or grip, and then a 70-pound ball of steel falls into the floor. And I'm not a huge fan of that. So we have kettlebell swings usually in like EMOMs. It's very controlled. Then heavy weightlifting in Metcon. I think the risk versus reward isn't quite there. Unless you're very proficient in snatching, like squat snatching and squat clean and jerk, having a Metcon where you're really pushing high heart rate and going for those lifts, I don't think are generally worth it for the day-to-day person that's just coming in from, meetings all day and sitting in a chair, and then I'm asking them to run 400 meters and max out their clean and jerk. Heavy weightlifting is very useful, and I like it a lot, but I think it should be done more in a controlled setting. And then kipping handstand push-ups. I think we can all agree that strict pull-ups are really cool, and rebounding your body weight off of your cervical spine is, what it says here on the slides, is for the birds. But I don't know. If you want to do them, you can, but I'm willing to hear a good reason to do it. Now, your selected bias. So some things that you could be doing that could be hurting your fitness, or maybe you're just doing it on purpose. But when I program erg, you're always picking the same erg. And oftentimes, if you're not mixing it up, especially on the days where the erg isn't that big of a factor, and you're on the bike, and I use the bike because I see a lot of people scale with the bike, you're not getting the minimum effective dose. You're already too good on the bike for that to be effective. So if you were to just use the ski erg and even scale that a little bit, you would get a way better workout because you're not proficient enough on the ski erg. So I recommend branching out. Try to use different equipment. Then skipping days that you don't like. Now, is it a day, why don't you like it? Is it because you're bad at it? Then you should not skip it so you can try to go better. No one's going to give you crap for really scaling it because it's challenging. Just scale the workouts and try to do the ones that you want. If you had a really hard day, and I always use this reference, if you cried today and you just really don't want to do thrusters like me, and it's just really tough, then okay, maybe skip that day, but it shouldn't become a habit where you're like, oh, I just haven't done a thruster in 6 months. And then, like I said, feeling versus reality. The movements that you don't like typically have a higher recency bias than the movements that you like. So if you hate burpees and we do burpees on Monday and you come on Thursdays and those are the 2 days, you're going to be like, we do burpees every day. Whereas if you love power cleans and running and we do a power clean running workout, and then on Thursday we max out our power clean, and then on Saturday we have another power clean or sandbag cleans, you're going to be like, this programming is so much fun. You know what I mean? So just kind of take a look at the week or the last 2 weeks and be like, okay, are we doing burpees every day, or is that just my mind? For me personally, if we do thrusters, or if I do thrusters more than twice a month, I feel like my whole life is thrusters. Now, ways to maximize each class. Number one is definite. These aren't necessarily ranked in order, but food at the top is definitely the most important. If you're coming to class 3 times a week, the results that you're looking for that you might not be getting is highly, highly likely that it's in the food that you're eating or not eating. 3 to 4 times a week is plenty of intense exercise to get pretty much anything that you want. If you want to gain weight, making sure that you're getting the right amount of macronutrients, or if you want to lose weight, more running isn't the answer. Probably tweaking the diet and making that better instead of just being like, yeah, but I'll run and it'll make me better. It's like, you don't need more running. You need higher quality food. Then optimizing for psychological stressors, your workday, your work week, your boss, your children, all of those things, all, whether you want to or not, include in your overall training volume. It can increase your risk for injury, and it can really hurt your performance if you're under a lot of psychological stress. So you can't just tough it out all the time when you're burning the candle at 3 ends. Then another way to really improve your workout and knowing yourself as an athlete is reading the workout before coming to class, and then just try to guess your time that you're going to get in the Metcon. So you start understanding how long it takes you to do 20 wall balls, how fast you can row. That way you're able to communicate with the coach much better. If you could say like, hey, I could typically row this pace at this. What do you think I should do on this? We love those type of questions. Not just, what weight should I use? I don't know. What weight do you? I don't know. I never track. Okay. Can I see one? And then it's truly just shooting from the hip. It's not great guessing. If you have a better idea, then we can get to the next point, which is prioritize the intended stimulus of each workout instead of what you could do. I know you can do bar muscle ups, but if it's 30 chest to bar and you want to scale up to 30 bar muscle ups and it's going to take you 20 minutes just to do those, you're missing the whole intended stimulus. So the question is always like, how can I scale this up while maintaining the intended stimulus? And then also with that is finishing an AMRAP or rounds for time. Don't be that person when the timer goes off and you're not under duress and you're like, I'm just going to finish the next round, or you're still gritting it out and you're going to go for another 2 or 3 minutes. If you really wanted to finish the rounds for time, or if you truly did the AMRAP to a really, really high level of intensity, the timer should save you. That beep should be like, oh, finally, I need to stop. And then you need to cool down. All right. And you might be missing the mark on intensity and allowing yourself to really push if that's something that you do. And again, talk to your coach on like, hey, how do I push during this? I want to go to the next slide. Here we go. Ways to skill up. Identify your limiting factors. Is it strength? Is it coordination? Is it flexibility? The full body assessment that Meg has been doing with the different members has been huge. She's finding all kinds of things that people need to work on, and then she comes up with exercises that you could do, like tracks, but specifically for you, not that vague avatar, and that you can actually unlock what the problem is. So I highly recommend setting up a full body assessment. She'll ask you all kinds of questions and run you through all these tests and stuff, and she will give you really good answers. Other than that, you could also talk to the coach in the middle of a class for a couple of minutes and be like, hey, here's my problem. Here's what I can do. What do you think the next thing is? And then you can go off and kind of explore on how you could do that. And then if it's still very important to you and you don't want to do a full body assessment, you could just ask for a coach to program specific movements for you to do after class or to do during class or at home that will help you do this. We've done this plenty of times where people have a home gym. They really want a strict pull-up. I give them 4 weeks of strict pull-up work to work over the next 8 weeks or whatever, and then they have a pull-up. Now, ways to give feedback. I really like all kinds of feedback. I definitely filter it through depending on, considering the source, but rather than more running, like, hey, I want more running, or hey, and I'm not picking on anybody specific, it's just easy to use this example. It's way better to say, hey, I looked at the last 2 weeks of workouts and we only ran 600 meters. That's not very much running. Why? And I may say, oh, well, we're in a 5-3-1 and it's winter and I just haven't been programming running. Or I may say like, oh, wow, yeah, I've been missing that movement. Let's add some in more next week instead of doing just more double unders or more erg work. And then is it trying to be more specific with what do you mean by more running? So do you want more running in terms of distance, like 800 meters isn't long enough for you? Or you're like, I want to run or have some portion of the running on every day of class. So that's kind of, what specifically do you mean by more? And then, like I said in the other intended stimulus, the added 2 to 3 minutes of a Metcon may not be as valuable as you think. You're still working in that energy system. One more 200 meters out of like that's going to take another minute or two in a workout isn't really going to move the needle in terms of running. And then the reason behind the reason is you want longer Metcons. And I'm not saying this is everybody that does this, but I've seen this before. They'll ask for longer Metcons, and I'll be like, why? And they'll be like, because I want to lose weight. Or they'll say like, I want better aerobic capacity. And it's like, well, doing longer Metcons, another even 8 minutes total per week of Metcons isn't going to move the needle in terms of weight loss. You need a diet. Or it's like, hey, you don't need longer Metcons on your Saturdays when you're doing this, you're already going for walks. Put a weight vest on. That will make it a little bit harder. You'll get that minimum effective dose, and then your aerobic capacity will go up and you'll feel better. And so again, it might not just be what you think it is. It's typically like you try to get specific on what you want and not what you think what will get you what you want. I hope that makes sense. Thank you very much for listening to all of that. Please send any follow-up questions or feedback if you want me to go deeper into something, or if you're like, hey, I have no idea what you were talking about, or you're like, I would love to get my own tracks or whatever. You can email me at elliot@dauntlessnh.com, or you could just comment on this video. I'm pretty sure people will be able to see if you comment, but if you go to a certain section and you comment, it will show when specifically I was talking about that, so you can be more specific with it. All right. Thanks again. Bye.